Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I'm back with some more MBTI. Today we're going to be checking out TV personality Tucker Carlson on his interview with Adam Carolla on his podcast. But before we do, let's talk about the system because you have not seen MBTI done the way that I do it. This is the type grid that I use, and we have five choices, A or B, that will help us to determine what type Tucker is. Now, this is not a medical diagnosis. I am not a medical professional. I am not attempting to diagnose any disease or disorder. We are merely looking for signs and clues of ways of thinking that we can identify with ourselves and try to get a grip on our own lives through the use of typology. The method that I have developed and that I believe works is this. We are looking for either things or ideas. Do you focus on the here and now into the past or the here and now into the future? Is it things that you can actually put your hands on, or is it the concepts and the ideas behind those things? That's going to determine whether you are S or an N. It's going to be within those categories you are either getting new ones or sorting through old ones. And so you are either going to gather or organize. You will either do that for yourself or for the tribe. That doesn't mean that you only do it for yourself. If you're self oriented, then you do it for yourself first and then you do it for the tribe. As opposed to if you do it or tribe oriented, your sole goal is to give it to the tribe. And you get the benefit when the tribe does or later. Next, we look to see whether you're rigid or flexible around the particular area of interest, right? If you are things oriented, are you flexible about the things or are you strict on the things? Is your way the only way or do you work around other people? Are you rigid? Are you flexible? And directed informative is whether or not you deliver all the information and stop, or if you deliver all the information three times and chase a couple rabbit holes along the way. All of these things put together help to determine what type you might be. Right? We are looking for identifiers to help us help ourselves, and we will talk more about those tools in a little bit. But for now, let's dive into the interview with Tucker Carlson. Now, Tucker does a lot of interviews of other people, so it's hard to find him. I tried to get whoever is doing the interview with the least amount of subs because we were trying to spread awareness about other people. And Adam Carolla happened to draw the lucky lot on this one. They're friends, so they're comfortable with each other. And I've been fast forwarded into the interview so that we can get past the introductions and all of the stilted stuff and really see what the actual focus of the discussion is going to be. Is Tucker going to be focused on things or ideas? New ones or old ones? Is he rigid or is he flexible? Is he doing it for himself or the tribe? Let's find out. Let's go.
Well, I think you think incrementally, or one dreams incrementally. You know, when I was on a construction site, my only goal was to get off a construction site and get a radio job.
Right.
And I always say to myself, I thank God there was no deal with the devil to sign. Because when I was on the construction site, they said you can work doing FM radio for the rest of your life and nothing else. I would have said, give me that contract.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know how fast I can sign that contract. And then you have some success in that arena and you go into another arena and you have some success. But then at some point you step back and you sort of go, well, why not have all of it? You know, instead of being just gainfully employed, why not really go for that brass ring? But that's a process. And I think I've seen you kind of go through it.
Well, it's true. And I look back on because I did a very similar job for decades, it's pretty easy for me to compare different times of my life since I was doing the same thing. I wasn't working on a construction site when I was 25. I was in the political media in Washington. And I stayed there from 1991 to 2020. So
dates and pulling the dates is things oriented, right?
I look back at myself and I'm like, I can't believe, for example, I supported the war in Iraq. Why did I do that?
Specific thing.
Now, I think to my credit, I went to Iraq in 2003 and realized I'd been completely wrong, and I said so. I didn't continue to lie, but I did go along with things I was uncomfortable with. I didn't ask difficult enough questions, and I wound up supporting something that was really bad for the United States and evil.
Okay, so that lends towards self-orientation as opposed to tribe orientation, kinda. But then you have a whole lot of the tribe is telling me to do this thing, so I'm going along with it. So that could be in play too, right?
Well, in my opinion. So why did I do that? Part of it was I was young and stupid. Part of it was, I think, if I'm being honest, this was not conscious, but it's still true. I felt vulnerable. You know, I had at the time 3 kids. I've got a mortgage. Like, do you really want to pick a fight with everybody?
So again, back to the things. The kids and the mortgage are things, right? Not in the grand scope of things, but in the conversation. It's not the idea of the kids, it is the kids. It's not the idea of the mortgage, it is the mortgage. These are the things that kept me in the spot. That's the focus, is the things. That doesn't mean that it's materialistic, like, but that is the focus.
When you're
Now, is it the best things or is it all the things?
31 and you're just trying to like pay
Again, 31, that's a number, that's a date, right? That's not a in the future. That is a me in the past. That is an actual event that has happened that lends towards things again.
tuition and keep your shit together, maybe you don't. And I think it's an age thing to a certain extent. Like at
Okay,
a
as
certain
an idea.
age, whatever it is, if you're in the same business,
At a certain age, whatever it is, those are broad, right? That is broad ideas brought in support of the thing.
and you feel like you've sort of done what you set out to do, you're like, I don't really need to impress anybody at this point. I'm not, in debt. Speaking for myself, I'm not rich. I will never be rich. I'm pretty sure of that. But I'm not in hock to anybody. I don't owe anybody anything. And my kids are grown. So it's like, why would I ever lie? I'm just in a different place. And so
I feel that on a fundamental level.
you can't, it's not that I lied intentionally before. I mean it. I didn't. I never have been in favor of lying. However, I think I did not allow myself to think certain things.
Okay, so I'm getting a lot of myself, right? It's his interview. It's about him. I get that. But there's different ways that the conversation could go. And we're getting a lot of I statements overall. I feel like the chance for the E was that he's being flexible. I think that's more of a flex over a control as opposed to yeah.
Because they were just too counter narrative. They were like, everybody I knew, the world I lived in Northwest DC, like everyone works either directly for the government or is a parasite on government effectively, including people I love and know really well. And the media is too, by the way. I mean,
Okay, so that is a judgment about the things.
media is reporting on government, but it's also dependent on government. In 2008, it became really clear that Barack Obama had been having sex with men and smoking crack. And a guy came forward, Larry Sinclair, and said, I'll sign an affidavit. And he did. I'll take a lie detector. And he did.
Evidence. Like that's all things, right? Everything he's listing here is not an idea. It's not a concept. It's not speculation. These are factual things. And he's laying them out. He is presenting you with the thing options. That's where this is leading, right? More than sort, this seems look, right? That's the difference. You go, hey, look at these things, as opposed to look at this thing. He's not telling you look at this thing. He's like, hey, look at these things.
Smoked crack with Barack Obama and had sex with him. Well,
specific thing, but like it's a couple of specific things, right? It's not. It is specific. So he's got his SI in order, but this seems more SE exploratory. Have you seen these things? Right? It's a list of things have you seen. So
that was obviously true. Nobody reported it, not because they were squeamish about sex or drugs, but because the Obama campaign said.
Considering why they didn't report it and saying that is flex, right? That's not my way or the highway. This is why they're thinking that. So that's giving flex.
Anyone who reports on this gets no access to the Obama campaign. And so they didn't report on it. So that happens. That's just one small example, but that happens all the time with lots of different issues.
Now,
And
do you believe that transpired, or do you believe?
Okay, so that was one question and one answer. It was fairly long, but it wasn't necessarily rambling, right? He was giving specific examples to prove his point. Even though it was long, that is more direct. We didn't get a repeat of the information. We'll continue to look, but that gives more of a direct feel than an informative feel.
If the guy is legitimate or both?
Oh, the Larry Sinclair story? Oh, that definitely happened. Oh, for sure. I mean, I've talked to Larry Sinclair about it, and oh, definitely it happened. I mean, Larry Sinclair's been in and out of prison during one period. I mean, 40 years ago, he was in and out of prison. He's got a criminal record by definition. He's, poor. He's got a disordered life. He's missing a tooth. Like, he's not, an Atlantic fellow. He's not going to the Aspen Ideas Festival. I think he has a record of deception. Obviously, he does.
Okay, so that was a list of evidence, right? Look at these things. It could be look at these ideas, but they are more grounded in the actual things that have happened as opposed to the ideas of the things that have happened. So it seems to be grounded in things. It seems to be more exploratory than it seems to be sorting. He's giving the details, but that could be because he has worked on his stack, right? Not necessarily in the way that I talk about it, but integrating your stack is part of maturing and getting good at your job. He's at the top of his game. He's going to be mature in his stack. And so he's doing the SI part of the organization. But his focus seems to be on keeping the things as the option, right? To giving the things. Now, whether he did that for himself first or the tribe is still pretty much to be determined, right? He has a good bit of tribe focus. He's bringing in examples of the tribe, of things, but that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be tribe focus. It could be self. He gave a lot of I statements. So we're still kind of debating that. But it definitely does seem to be things over ideas, and it seems to be new over old.
But this story, if you listen to it in detail, is clearly true. I mean, there's just, I'm going to do an interview with him and you can hear it. And again, it's not going to change the world that Barack Obama likes dudes. I think this was well known. Barack Obama said,
I might get banned.
And so himself in a letter to his girlfriend. And by the way, that's kind of Barack Obama's business. I'm not attacking him for liking dudes. I'm just saying the amount of lying in the media.
I did not cherry pick this.
Was unbelievable. Like, people knew this was true, and it was quite obviously true at the time. And
people knew this was true as a flex, right?
People who covered the campaign didn't say anything about it because they didn't want to lose access to the campaign.
We're giving you the reasons why they didn't do it as flex, right? He could very well stop with, they knew and it's done, but he's giving you the reasons why. So that is more flex than control. There's not a whole lot of other flex versus control being shown. And if there's not a lot of control being shown, assume flex. If there's a lot of flex being shown, it's easy to see, but it's easy to miss just a little bit of flex, right? It's much easier to see the control being shown. So if you're not seeing the control being shown, lean towards the flex.
And that happens all the time up and down government. So it's almost like if you have a housekeeper, you think, oh, she works for me. But if you have a housekeeper long enough, you realize, well, you actually work for her. And
definitely flex right there, right? And that is even a good bit of tribe compensation, right? Absorbing that into your tribe, and so then the hierarchy changes.
You get caught up in her dramas. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
there's a weird dynamic where you switch places with people.
No, and by the way, fire her abruptly, and she'll write a tell-all book about Tucker at home.
That's exactly right. And we don't even have a full-time housekeeper, so like that's not going to be an issue for me. But the point is, you think you're holding government accountable, but actually they're controlling you. That's really the dynamic in Washington. But
that's the best idea, right? Which would be the countermand. Right, so SE and NI work together, and SI and NE work together. And how it goes in your stack is how you wind up in the type grids. And so if you are SE, then the NI is going to be the supporting characteristic there. If he is indeed things and exploratory, that's SE. And that's going to make the NI be the supporting function. And so where he's going with the bringing the idea here down to this one box is supporting all of these things that he has brought. Right? He has brought us many things, but not a lot of ideas. And the ideas that he's bringing us is to him the best idea or the worst one. Either way is an NI decision.
But actually they're controlling you. That's really the dynamic in Washington. But you're living in the soup, and it's hard to see it at work. And this is a long way of saying the conclusions I've reached are middle-aged conclusions. And that's a lot of it.
Right.
It's just that I've gotten older, and you can't see certain things when you're younger. And it's like,
that's a box.
Young people, you'd think they'd be the most open-minded of all. They're the least open-minded.
That's true.
Because they're afraid of the future. So they want to believe whatever storyline they've been fed is true. Like, the only problem with America is white supremacy, and like our tax system is fair, and Kennedy was assassinated by a lone gunman, or whatever. They don't want
a bunch of examples, right?
They don't want to face like the terrifying unknown and complexities of the actual world we live in, the reality of life, which is like, we have no freaking idea what's going on, actually. They don't want to admit that.
That's a big box.
Yeah, I would say that's true for younger people, micro and macro, because when you're 31, as you've discussed, and you're working for ESPN, and you don't think it'd be a good idea to get vaccinated because you're fit and healthy, and 31, you are making business decisions. It's not about the world's future, it's about your future. You may just have gotten married and had a young child.
All right. We should get a fairly good example of self-tribe here, right? The motivation behind this question and its answer should give us self or tribe. Now, it may not, right? It may go off in a whole different direction, but it should. We should see how the motivation lies here.
And
it's totally.
And that's really all I'm waiting on. Like, we're pretty good on the rest. Like, direct informative, we could probably have some debate on that. Like, part of this is him wanting to fully explain. And it's more about if you do the explanation and then you explain it again and then you explain it, as opposed to if I give one full, complete, lengthy explanation. So I'm going to try to pay attention to that and self or tribe orientation right here, because those are really the only two things that are, to me, not already okay.
Right. But this is why they hate Trump in D.C., because
this is why right? That's some tribe.
It is not as simple as like, oh, if I support Trump, I'll lose money. It's that Trump is a threat to the whole ecosystem of bullshit that makes Washington the richest city in the world, and its suburbs the richest suburbs. Because once you start questioning things, like basic things like, why do we have NATO? Well, no one can answer that question. NATO is obviously a force for instability and bad in the world, right?
Okay, so that was a why do we have NATO? That's broadening the focus. That's kind of tribe focused. So there are quite a few tribe-centered things here. So he may very well be on the east side.
But no one allows himself to like update, their perceptions of NATO. It's like, no, they're keeping the Soviets at bay. Well, the Soviets don't exist anymore. So when Trump asks a question like that, nobody in D.C. can grapple with it honestly, because if we're being honest, their livelihoods are tied up in things like NATO and Head Start and Medicare and failed projects that no one's allowed to
examples of actual things, right?
Assess, because it will disempower them. That's the truth.
Yeah, my assessment of.
Okay, so. There was not a lot of repeating information. It was lengthy. There was a few added things in there even, but it wasn't really all that informative leaning. Every example that he used was relevant to what he was saying and furthered the point just enough that he could continue. And so that is direct, right? You're giving the best information as quickly as possible. And from there, we'll go ahead and look at the type grid. And so he seems to me to be things oriented, right? That is going to put us on the left-hand side of the screen. Actually, my camera's backwards, so it's going to put us on the left-hand side of the screen. And from there, we're going to be gathering new ones. That is going to be the first column. We are doing this, it appears, for the tribe more than self. We're going to look for confirmation of that, but that seems to be fairly good. So that's going to be the third row. From there, he appears to be fairly flexible. It's not all about my way. It's about accommodating some of these new things that I have encountered. And so that appears to be an F as opposed to a T. So we're looking at an ESFP. So give me just 1 second and I will pull up that for us to look at. And we will look at the last thing, which is direct and informative. That's going to do what slot, or what the third slot is, whether it's introverted or extroverted, how you deliver the information back. Are you holding the information for yourself in a direct manner, or are you volunteering excessive information in an informative manner? He is direct, so that is going to put us on the right hand of the side of the screen as an alternate, because NI is the introverted part of the function. And so the I means me, where the E means everyone. And so he is holding the energy for himself before he gives it to everyone else. Let's go ahead and dive into what these things mean. What is an ESFP? Focused on more than anything and do almost flawlessly. Gathering the examples, the actual physical things that you can actually touch, right? The studies. Now, he's not choosing the best study. He's saying, look at all these studies. The cars. He's not choosing the best car. He's saying, look at all these cars. He's bringing examples to the tribe specifically, and then he uses that to benefit himself after the tribe has seen the value in it. He feels responsible for his morals and the past feelings, and so he's going to be very much concerned with what he thinks is correct, and as long as he's got the correct information coming in from the rest of the stack, he's going to stand on that and feel like he's responsible for it. This is the crown. This is where you receive the information from the divine, and it's what you feel responsible for getting out there. Now, he's going to use his third eye and look forward into the future and want that for, it's going to be the NI, which is the best possibilities and guidance. So he's going to want to narrow down the best possibilities. The problem is going to be that he's going to be defensive over it. So he's going to narrow it down to the best possibility, and he's going to be firmly decided because of his morals. This is the best possibility. But he's going to miss some things along the way, and that's going to cause problems. But he's going to get defensive over the ideas. He's bringing all of this evidence in defense of the ideas. The throat is going to be the miscommunication and misunderstanding. And for him, that is going to be the TE, what everyone thinks. This is the actual science end of it, right? This is the consensus is TE, what others' thoughts is, and the rationale of others' thoughts all play together. And he's going to misunderstand that. You can see that in his stance on the Iraq War. He thought that the Iraq War was good because the people that he trusted to give him the information, their thoughts, gave him the wrong information. And when he found out about that, his FI kicked in. And he's like, nope, this goes against my morals. I will not support this best idea anymore. That is literally this function in action, right? He got the example, checked it against his morals, and it was not correct. So he very much bucked back against everyone's thoughts. It is literally the stack in action. What's going to trip him up, right? The bottom half of the stack is where you get it a little bit wrong. The information coming in starts from the negative side or is heavily filtered through the positive side. So you have to pay more focus to it to get it right. But when you get it right, it helps you greatly. The heart is what you want to do with your life. And what he wants to do with his life is take all of these examples and narrow them down into the best example to give to you, right? That's what he wants. That's what his heart desires. The SI, narrowing the things into the one thing. organization, making sure that things work the way that it should. And the way that he needs to do that in order to feed that is to get everyone else's feelings, not just his, right? He gets his, he can stand in his, he's responsible for his, but he misses everybody else's. You need to get that, because that is going to allow you to actually narrow down all of these options into the best option, and therefore fulfill what you really want to do. What's going to trip him up? This is the trickster energy, right? The sacral and the trickster energy, the sexual energy, is where you unintentionally, intentionally choose the wrong thing. You don't mean to choose bad things, but you do. For him, it is going to be seeing all of the possibilities, having the foresight of what is going to happen in the future, getting the correct information to be narrowed down into the one NI box. He's got the box, he's just not getting all the things to put in the box correctly. And that is in large part because of the base, right? The logic checks, right? That is the taking for granted what all of these authorities said at the TE, and then not making the correct yes-no checks because of that. The information you're getting is coming in wrong, and you're checking with the wrong yes-nos. You need to align your yes-nos. I'm not here to tell you what those are or how to do that. Here, I have another video. It is the ESFP video. It will be linked, and you should definitely check it out if you think that you might be an ESFP. The system that I use, like the typology that I use, is a little bit different than anything you've seen before. It is an integration of a lot of other things, and there are many sources that fed into it, but the system is mine and it worked for me. Some other people have found value in it as well, and hopefully you can find some value in it too. Look for the examples that identify who you feel with, right? Like, that looks to me like something I identify with. I bring all the examples of the things. Maybe I'm an SE. Let me check the grid. Figure out where you want to change your life, and this can give you the structure to start building upon that. We're going to dive back in for just a few more minutes, and we're going to see what the confirmations against is, right? So we're looking for ESFP, so we're going to be looking for confirmations of that. Let's go ahead and dive back in.
Of the era we just sort of passed through with an emphasis on COVID was Trump was going to topple the apple cart and disrupt, as you said. The system needs to remain in place, and so they will attack Trump. And then it started to bleed into things like COVID. And what happened with stuff like COVID is, if you said, I'm against getting my kids vaccinated, or I would like to open schools, in and of itself, me having a couple of kids in high school and suggesting that we reopen schools or never close schools is just a subject, and you could have a debate about it, and I think I would win. But the ad hominem attacks on me or anyone who said innocuous things like, I don't want an experimental vaccine, or I don't want to close the schools, or
Y'all want me to do Adam Carolla? Y'all let me know in the comments if you want me to do Adam.
I think the beaches should remain open in California. Not
like, I don't know a whole lot about Adam, but he seems like an interesting fella, and I'm doing this in part because I'm learning more about interesting people. So
close down. If you really just think about those are just policy arguments, and if you got hold of me a few years ago, I wouldn't know who was on what side of that argument, Republican or Democrat. But now, if you said, I don't want to take the vaccine, I want schools open and beaches open, you have outed yourself as a Trump supporter / Republican. And you don't need to be destroyed because you want to keep the schools open. You need to be destroyed because you outed yourself as MAGA.
It's 100% right. I think you're exactly right. And you see it up and down the system in places that are fundamentally apolitical. I mean, I actually was just this morning with Dave Portnoy from Barstool Sports, who's like genuinely non-political, like not that interested, but he kind of liked Trump.
Y'all want me to do Dave Portnoy? Let me know in the comments down below.
I think Dave's kind of a liberal, but whatever. He liked Trump at the very beginning, and he said so, and he made the mistake of interviewing Trump at Trump's request at the White House.
Example?
and asked him a bunch of non-political questions about pizza and sports. Okay. And again, he's not interested in politics, so far as I can tell, at all. And he's a sports guy. And he said his life changed. Being photographed with Trump made him the subject of like actual hate that, you know, he didn't understand. He was approaching it rationally. He's like, I run a company about college football and wet t-shirt contests. Like, why are you hassling me? But it changed everything for him to the point where people yelled at him in public, and it just blew his mind.
Right.
We just had this conversation, weirdly.
Well, I wanted to play a clip for you because I had Chris Cuomo on this show, and then I was on.
Okay, so we have had several examples of gathering the tribe's thoughts, right? Now, whether or not he's doing that effectively, you mature with age, you get better with age, and growth within your stack is absolutely a thing. The main focus still appears to be on the literal examples as opposed to the fundamental ideas. He is bringing, in this case, an example of something that has happened. This particular example is recent. That is easier for him, but he's not narrowing down necessarily by only bringing the one example. It is just an example. He's not trying to shove it as the best example. It's just a example. So that gives me the gather new. Again, that feels like it's fitting fairly well, right? He is the things versus ideas fits fairly well. He has an idea about what the best idea is, but he's bringing specific examples. He's not hammering the idea and then supporting it with the examples. It's about the examples. And so the main difference with the main contention for me was the tribe, self, or direct informative. And he seems to be fairly tribe oriented, so I'm comfortable with an E on that. And then he appears to be fairly direct, or fairly direct. Even when he gives lengthy answers, it's not over explaining, it is explaining enough. And so I'm fairly confident with this. It feels pretty good. ESFP feels like a nice fit. So if you identify with that and you find things that you want to change in your life and you're wondering why you're stuck on your TI, I have a video for that. I have a playlist for that. Infinite Integrations can help you figure out what's going on in your mind. It's a little bit too woo-woo for people. There's a lot of prayer and meditation involved in what I do. And if so, I have another playlist for you. It's just the MBTI parts that can help you figure out where your stack lies and how you can help to integrate that into yourself. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a somewhat complicated topic. I know that I'm doing something different than if you came here because of MBTI. You're like, what is this guy even talking about? Hang around for a while. You're going to find out. This system works fairly consistently. It appears to work. And all of it is subjective, of course, but I have tried to make it more objective. I have tried just a little bit to make the logical consistency hit. I'm all about the best ideas, and so I feel like this is the best idea. I could be wrong. I am perfectly willing to accept that. Other people, however, have found use in what I am doing, and so I'm going to continue doing it, and hopefully I can help you too. I want to help you to find what you want to change about you so that you can improve your life in the way that you want to improve your life. That's what I'm all about here. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are, and this has been Pit Steak. Peace.